Chapter 2. A Bargain is Struck. The morning that had begun so strangely for Callie held more surprises. The attendant who came with food was followed by the slave dealer himself. The hard-faced white man ordered the captives to form in line after they had eaten. The Negroes could not understand his words, but the order was repeated by the attendant. He spoke Mandingo, the Mandi language. What now? A shiver of dread ran through the slave pen. Any new thing, any change would probably be for the worse. Callie stumbled to his feet and crept with what haste his chains would allow to the side of his mother. She took the arm he offered, but she was too weak to stand. She sank down again to the ground and buried her face. The slave dealer crossed the yard in long strides. He held a short whip in his hands, but he did not use it. He looked down at the woman, shrugged, and turned to order the others forward. Again his servant repeated the command in the Mandingo language. Then he added, as if his words were still part of the master's order, You are to go down to the sea and bathe. He wants you to make a good appearance for what will come after. Then, seeing that Callie did not move from his mother's side, the attendant prodded the boy roughly into line. Under the eye of the master, the man made a show of roughness, but he whispered under his breath, I will stay to tend the woman. Go in peace. A small gate creaked open. Outside the walls, two white men with guns stood on guard. As Callie passed through the gate, he noticed that the guards counted on their fingers the number of slaves leaving the yard. He could have told them that the number was 57. They were the three young girls, Marga, Teme, and Fernie. Two older women, not counting his mother, four boys his own age or younger, and 47 grown men. But for all the guards' careful counting, only 56 captives returned from the beach. One of the older women simply kept walking in the water until the waves offshore came over her head. She disappeared without a sound before the guards saw what was happening. The other captives watched with mixed feelings. Tua, an old man, a scholar, cried out and reached with his long arms to try to save her, but others made movements as if to follow the woman's example. For a moment, the example of such an easy death stirred the bathers, like wind sweeping through a field of parched grass. It was Cinca's voice that broke the spell. Not that way, he shouted. Whom do you cheat if you take your lives by drowning? The kidnappers? You cheat them only of your labor, but you cheat yourselves most of all. The only thing we've got left is our lives. While we live, we have a chance of freedom. The white men on guard with their guns came running up at the sound of Cinca's urgent voice. They could not understand what he was saying. They knew nothing of the woman who had drowned herself, but they saw that something was wrong and drove the slaves back into the pen. In the center of the yard, the Africans saw that a platform had been set up. Nearby, the slave dealer stood talking to two strangers in white, tight-fitting clothes and shining boots. Callie's eyes darted from the sight of the strangers to the spot where he had left his mother. But the young girls, Teme, Marga, and Fernie, surrounded her, kneeling on the ground at her feet. The boy could glimpse only her bent head and a fold of her trailing blue garment. With the other captives, Callie backed against the wall as the slave dealer left his companions and strode forward. The man looked over the huddled group and then pulled one man forward. Komono, a tall, silent huntsman with wide tattoo marks on his neck. The slave dealer urged Komono toward the platform. He motioned with the hand that held the whip for Komono to mount. Then he beckoned the other white men, his customers, to come close to examine and make their offer for his excellent slave. The younger of the strangers felt of Kimono's muscles, examined his scars, his eyes, his teeth. The slave dealer, meanwhile, kept up a patter of talk in that language none of the Africans could understand. Kimono stepped down from the platform and Pugna, the youngest of the boys, took his place. The thin man in leather boots stepped up again. Again the slave dealer began his chatter. It had come, the selling. What good now was Cinca's brave talk of freedom, of return to the land of the rising sun? Kali kept his back to the wall and edged slowly away from the group of waiting captives. He crouched low, trying to make himself invisible against the wooden boards. Unnoticed, he crept toward the other side of the yard, toward his mother, until he stood just behind her, with his hands clenched to his sides. Sit down and relax, Senor Montes urged when he and Ruiz came out to the patio of the hotel at the close of the midday meal. After his difficult morning's work at the barracoon, the young man would have enjoyed a long, quiet rest. To drink something cool and watch the sunlight play over the statues in the garden would be delightful. Sit down, his companion repeated lazily. You have earned a rest. It's not every day you buy 50 blacks with good sound bodies at bargain prices too. Your uncle should be grateful. Ruiz prided himself as a judge of blacks and agreed that he had struck good bargains. He had caught the fact in time that the older women were not good buys, the one with a bad wound, the other fever-ridden. Since Montes had bid for the 3 girls, this left only men and boys for him to bargain for. But he had made his uncle's 25,000 pesos go far. He had bought 50 likely laborers. Yet somehow he did not like the tone of Montes's praise. Ruiz glanced at the older man to see if perhaps he was being made fun of for taking his duties seriously. But Montes looked perfectly friendly as he ordered a long drink and settled back in comfort. He was pleased himself with the morning at the barracoon. He had bought only 3 slaves, but they were all young, healthy girls who would be useful on his plantation. Yes, Pepe, Montes concluded, sipping his drink. Your uncle will say well done. But Ruiz could not relax. The work is not complete yet, he answered a little sharply. You forget that we have not arranged for transport. The blacks must be delivered to Puerto Príncipe, and we have not found a boat to carry them. Transport? Pedro Montes waved his hand in the direction of the harbor. That should be simple. Just go down to the waterfront and see which of the coastwise schooners are in port. We planters give the sea captains our trade all year. It's little enough to ask of them to haul a few slaves around to the other side of the island. Simple for you, perhaps, Ruiz persisted. You have only 3 girls to think of. Carrying 50 men and boys fresh from the African voyage is a different matter. Nonsense, murmured Montes. I saw Ramon Ferrer on the plaza yesterday, with that new young wife of his clinging to his arm. He's got a sugar boat, the Amistad. If you must get the matter of transport settled in such a hurry, go down to the harbor and find him. He'll be glad enough to carry our cargo. Senor Montes stretched his legs out and took a sip of his drink. Go at once if you must. You are young, Pepe. You'll find that I haven't stirred from this spot when you return. It was not difficult for Ruiz to locate the long black schooner of Ramon Ferrer, but persuading the captain took all the young man's powers. The Amistad was a sugar boat, a topsail schooner of about 120 tons. She was American built. Though she flew the Spanish flag. Captained by Ramon Ferrer, she had been engaged for 6 years in a coastside traffic between Havana and the trading posts in the bays and harbors of Cuba. Captain Ferrer had always carried sugar, making certain number of trips each season when the cane was ready for transport. He delivered the fresh-cut canes to the sugar mills in Havana and brought back a cargo of silks, hardware, books, any luxury the planters ordered from the city. Once in a while, a planter or his family would ship as passengers. The captain always made room for them, although the Amistad was not a large boat and boasted only 2 cabins. Ferrer acted as his own navigator and picked up a fresh crew of 2 or 3 sailors for each voyage. It was cheaper to manage in this way, and he had no need for experienced seamen. His trips varied in length from 3 days to 4 weeks, depending on the winds, the weather, and the amount of trade. He had never carried slaves, except, of course, his own cook and the cabin boy, Antonio. The slave trade was profitable, especially since the treaty with Britain made importing Africans unlawful. Since the treaty had gone into effect, many ship owners had made fortunes. The number of captives brought in yearly had almost doubled, but it had never occurred to Ramon Ferrer to enter the trade. He had no taste for the traffic. Even when hard pressed for money, as he was now, the captain had not thought of transporting slaves on the Amistad. But Senor Ruiz had put the matter very nicely. I would like to take a few blacks with me down to my uncle's place in Puerto Príncipe. Would you consider them baggage for my friend and myself? Senor Pedro Montes, who wants to go along, um, was sure you would do us this favor. He has made a few purchases in the market himself. The slaves will hardly take more room than a good load of sugar canes. A Negro or 2, Captain Ferrer replied, can no doubt be managed. Well, to tell the truth, there will be a greater number than that. 50 would be nearer. Ruiz smiled disarmingly. 50 blacks on the Amistad? Ferrer shook his head. But Senor Ruiz was not easily discouraged. Consider them cargo. You traveled light down the coast, not always fully loaded on the return trip either, I would guess. That was true, heaven knows. Times were none too good, especially if one had a wife who liked silk dresses and jewels. And Senor Ruiz was a man worth knowing. Nor would it be bad business to do a favor for Senor Montes. He would undertake the transport of the slaves. Ferrer agreed if Senor Ruiz would have food, wooden planks for benches, padlocks, ropes, and everything else in readiness by dark. The wind being willing, the captain concluded a little abruptly, the Amistad will sail at dawn.